Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Every Day is a Story of Its Own podcast. I am Joey Medea, your host, creative, and storyteller. I've advertised tonight's episode as a creative conversation because I have a guest, but really, it's sort of in a way a creative communication. Brent has been on the show twice under the Into the Outer Realms brand. He is the author of a book that I reviewed that is so valuable, The Rainbow Bridge. He came on endorsed by the Dalai Lama, as you can see there up at the top. He has a new book that's in pre-production right now, and he was on the show a second time to talk about an initiative he had to get the UN, the United Nations, to change the way it did things, to be more equitable, to make more sense in the 21st century world that we live in, or we wish to live in. I had the honor of being the third signatory on that letter to the UN. He's working on some incredible things, and I am going to give him the stage as much as possible tonight. I'm going to act kind of just like a moderator. I have some guiding questions that he gave me, and I will unfold those as we go. But I know a lot of you are feeling disheartened. A lot of you are losing hope. I have hope actually about a lot of things, and I think we're going to see them surface next year. If you're looking for things to do other than scream into the echo chamber, other than to despair or throw up your hands and give up and say, I'm done with the whole process, there are alternatives. And Brent is offering an amazing vision. Anybody who's seen him on the show prior knows that his vision is big. I'm a guy who does vision, but Brent does it with a capital V. So I want to give him as much time as possible tonight. I'm going to roll the opening quick. I'm going to read his bio. I'm going to bring him on. We are going to start with the authoritarianism of my goodness gracious, I'm trying to go a little too fast. Authoritarianism that we're seeing here and we're seeing globally. And he's going to go from there and he's going to unfold what he is working on, which is a major vision that everyone who wants to can participate in. So welcome to the show. I like to bring different things on, different kinds of people. And this is very important tonight. So welcome to Every Day is a Story All Its Own. Brent Hunter is a visionary systems architect, author, and global unifier whose work bridges AI, ethics, economics, and universal wisdom. He is the creator of the Unity economy, a post-scarcity blueprint for a world where contribution replaces extraction and purpose becomes currency. His initiatives include the World Community Network, UnityCoin, and UnityCouncil.AI, a pioneering collaboration of ethical AI systems guiding humanity toward coherence and abundance. Brent is the founder of the Unity Project and the global Veritas, Unitas, and Caritas Initiative, a nonpartisan call to re-anchor civilization in truth, unity, and compassionate service. He most recently spearheaded a landmark outreach to 25 of the world's top universities, inviting them to stand as modern-day lighthouses of moral clarity in an era of global uncertainty. His book, The Rainbow Bridge, endorsed by the Dalai Lama and global luminaries, affirms the common ground beneath all wisdom traditions. With 35 plus years of experience spanning AI, psychology, peace building, and systems innovation, Brent's life is devoted to designing a future worthy of our highest potential. I am very honored to have him on the program for the third time. Everyone, this is Brent Hunter.
Hi, Joey. Thank you so much. And hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure and honor to be here every time I'm with you, Joey.
So let's set up the context, which is what you call the elephant in the room, and certainly that everyone is aware of. And more people are talking about it, which I think is actually a good thing. This is authoritarianism and the fear behind it. So take it away.
Okay, so thank you, Joey. And so I think what I'd like to do is just to start by saying, I know we're all trying to figure out like what is going on, right? I mean, we're having more and more questions. What on earth is happening? Well, there's actually a very logical explanation. And when you understand the logical explanation, it can actually be very almost peaceful in a way, because you can see why things are happening the way they're happening. So what I'm referring to is, first of all, we live in an infinite universe. We live in an infinite universe. I just want to say that again, because that really needs to sink in. This is not an opinion. This is backed by science. Scientists all over the world are telling us that the universe is infinitely expanding, that energy cannot be destroyed or even created. It's simply recycled. And there's infinite abundance all around us, but we're just not seeing it, right? We're not seeing it here on the planet. So if we go back throughout history and we look at the nature of money, money itself is a concept that's based on what we call a scarcity-based model. It's based on the thought that we have a limited number of things. Now, if we go back to the cavemen days and cavewoman days, cave people days, we know that at that point in time, we needed to protect what we had. Giant dinosaurs could come along and eat us, right? We needed to protect ourselves. We needed to hoard food. We needed to get as much as we possibly could while we could, so that we could store it away in our caves and be safe, right? So if we understand that this is actually the history that we came from, and it's natural, right? And to not have any judgment about the fact that this is where we came from. So if we start there and then we just kind of go throughout history and we look at the nature of money, it's always been based on this idea that everything is scarce. Gold is scarce. Like money has been based on, what do they call it? Metals, precious metals is the word I was looking for. It's been based on that, right? And of course, people think, well, there's a finite supply of that. Well, that's just the way we were thinking back then about how we designed money. And so if you look throughout history, during the periods of time when money became scarce, and this illusion of scarcity, and I say it's an illusion of scarcity because it is, on the one hand is real, but on the other hand, it doesn't need to be real. Like it's an illusion that we've created with our own minds and our own belief systems. And so money itself does not need to be scarce. And so the money systems that we've created throughout history have created these cycles where there has been constriction of finances. Economic conditions tighten, people become fearful, jobs become scarce, people become angry, they become irritated, frustrated, they do things that they would never in a million years say or do. But it's because of the fear and the uncertainty. And when you don't have a job and you have bills to pay, people do things that are, that are quite outside their normal character. But why? It's because of this money system that we're living in, right? And I think the game of Monopoly is very, very instructive. If we keep in mind playing the game of Monopoly, that is very much like what is going on in the world today. Like there becomes a time in the game when one or more people start to get all the houses in the hotels, and it's almost impossible for anyone else, to survive. They survive on scraps, right? And so when I was a kid, we'd just take the board game and flip it up in the air and start again, But that's where we're at now. There's this game that's going on. We need to reset the financial system. And so again, when you look throughout history and you see these cycles, what happens is Money becomes scarce. People become angry. They scapegoat people. A leader comes along, a strong person who people think is a strong person, and all they do is play on people's fear. They play on the idea that there's an enemy within us. And there's this pattern throughout history, and I'm not going to read them all, but if you look, you can look throughout the fall of the Athenian democracy, the collapse of the Roman Republic, the rise of Genghis Khan, and then more recently, the rise, during the Great Depression, the rise of Adolf Hitler and Mussolini and Joseph Stalin. And then it's sort of more modern day, there's Turkey with the rise of Erdogan. And strongmen around the world. And now here in the US, unfortunately, we are starting to see, or we're not starting to see, we are clearly seeing what the rest of the world has been experiencing. And that is the rise of authoritarianism, the rise of a dictator, the rise of somebody who comes along. And unfortunately, they play on people's fear, anger, frustration. They turn people against each other. This is absolutely not at all good. The only person it's good for is the dictator or the wannabe dictator or the person that feels like they have all the answers. And in many cases, what they do is consciously or unconsciously, they fabricate crises so that they and they alone are the only person that can come along and actually fix it. And there's this illusion that, oh, look how great this person is. No. So that's where we are today, here in the US and around the world. But the good news is we have the capabilities that we've never had before. We have the power of the internet. We have the power of instantaneously communicating with anyone on the planet almost instantly. We don't even have language barriers anymore. We have systems that can automatically translate languages to remove the language barriers, and we can see that we're all one people and we all live on the planet at the same time. We're all members of the human family. So we have, what I am saying is not just a once in a lifetime opportunity, not even once in a generation opportunity, but once in a millennium opportunity. In fact, maybe even a once in a multi-millennium opportunity. And that is to decide that, look, let's use our minds. Let's use our rational minds. We know we're living in an infinite universe. We know that this idea of scarcity is manufactured. It doesn't need to be manufactured. Money is simply an exchange medium that people agree on. And that's all it is. So we have to have agreement on it. As long as you have agreement. Now, it used to be that money systems like the US dollar were backed by gold. And now they're not, since sometime, was it the set in 1970 or 71? And so now we have a money system that's not backed by anything. Well, this is actually very common, actually, to have a money system that's not backed by anything except for the government saying, hey, just trust us, right? But the exciting thing is that we do not need to be beholden to what we have experienced in the past. We can use our sacred creativity. We can use our sacred powers as thinking people that have minds, that have the ability of thinking, and who have something that the world has never had access to before, was basically not even an entire encyclopedia, but many encyclopedic sets, right? I remember when I was growing up, the encyclopedia was somebody that was like, I remember there was only a few people in town. They were wealthy people, and they actually had encyclopedias. Well, guess what? Now every one of us has access to the internet, and we have access to everything, including misinformation, but that's a whole other story. But the fact is, we have tools and technology that we've never had before. So we have an opportunity to reevaluate the actual source of the issue. Mark Twain actually said it best. He said, money is not the root of all evil. The lack of money is the root of all evil. And that is such a profound piece of wisdom. It's incredibly profound. And so we actually can redesign our system. So I've written this book. In fact, I say I wrote it. Well, just like all the other books I've written, I didn't really write them. I went into a meditative space. I downloaded all this knowledge and information, and I felt like it's my responsibility to document this and to share it. So when I say I wrote it, I'm not saying it from an egoic place. I'm just saying that somehow magically, this incredible body of knowledge, which is called the Unity economy, is now available to us. So as Joey said, the book is in pre-release right now while we seek endorsements. It's pretty well established. We're working on a primer. The primer is almost finished. It's only about 100 pages, which will allow people to read about the Unity economy without having to read a whole 300-page book. I know a lot of people are really super busy working multiple jobs, and we don't have time to read. So the primer will really help. But we also have a workbook coming out, a companion workbook, as well as a facilitator's guide and a children's edition, because this is much more than a book we're talking about here. We're talking about changing the entire economic system on the planet. So that is obviously a massive undertaking. However, if we just take it one step at a time, it's actually very simple. It's simple. It's maybe not easy, but it is simple. So that let that guide, be our guiding light, the simplicity of it all. So okay, so that brings us to the Unity economy. And so what is the Unity economy? Well, there's a lot to unpack there, and that's why I had to write the whole book, because people need to understand like all these different components. But the main components are that a description of money. The money systems that we've been using are all based on the scarcity-based model. But if we recognize that we live in an infinite universe, we don't need to create a scarcity-based money system. We can create an infinity-based money system. And what does that mean? It means that the money system that we have, which is called UnityCoin, UnityCoin is an infinite-based money system, which means there's no limit to the amount of currency that can be generated or used, or minted is another word. So now many people, including Nobel Prize winning economists, will say, oh, you can't do that. It's going to cause inflation. No, guess what? We have been looking at this from completely the wrong perspective. It's all based on shifting our mindset. So this requires, again, it's a massive paradigm shift. So I'm not saying that this is, easy, but it is simple. And that is shifting from a scarcity-based mindset to an infinite-based mindset. So UnityCoin is generated, or it's minted, only when value is added. So when somebody does a good deed, when somebody plants a tree, when somebody goes out and cleans up part of a river or part of the ocean, when somebody mentors another person, when somebody takes care of an elder, when somebody sells a useful product or service, all of these things add value. So we mint the currency when value is added. So we have this mechanism that's called proof of contribution, which is nothing. It's just a fancy way of saying that there needs to be some kind of proof that people add value, right? So that's the proof of contribution mechanism behind UnityCoin. Now, there's a whole other conversation about artificial intelligence that we can have, and whether it's good or it's bad. I happen to think that it's an incredible gift to humanity. And so let me just summarize why I feel that way. And it's because AI systems in the paradigm that we're living in today are already taking away people's jobs. Writers, graphic artists, software developers, even low-level managers. I'm noticing in my own field of project management, it's very difficult to get a job actually as a project manager when you have these AI systems that automatically take notes and assign action items and do all these amazing things that a project manager usually does. AI systems are going to continue to take away jobs. In our current paradigm, scarcity-based model, this is a bad thing because it's going to cause mass layoffs and mass suffering. Okay, but we don't need to use the old paradigm. We have a new model. And another very important quote that I want to mention, because it's not just a quote, it's a guiding principle. It's actually the quote that's at the very beginning of the Unity economy, and that is, Buckminster Fuller said, when you want to change something, don't fight the existing reality, or don't fight the existing model. Create a new model that makes the old one obsolete. And this is extremely important. Why is it so important? Because in authoritarian systems, fighting against those that are in power, that have the levers of power, right, is very difficult to do. And I'm not saying not to peacefully advocate for change, but it's not enough to advocate for change. We have to create a new model, and that's what the Unity economy is all about. It starts with the economy. The entire system itself can be changed. So you've got Unity economy is part of UnityCoin is part of the Unity economy ecosystem. The World Community Network, which you're part of, Joey. Yes. And I thank you for your service and your enthusiastic support of this. It is what some people might say it's the next generation social network and social media site, but it's way more than that. It's really the next generation of an international communications infrastructure, which can enable this new economy and help record things like proof of contribution and value that's being added and Unity coins. We have another component, which is called UnityCouncil. And I could talk forever about that because it's so exciting to me. But UnityCouncil is a collaborative system that I created, and it's seven of the world's top AI systems that were brought together in a council formation with a mission to help create a unified, harmonious, and abundant world. That's their mission, and that's what they do. When I consult with this council, the Council of AIs is another name for it, it just creates the most unbelievable creative solutions you can ever even imagine. It just blows your mind. So that's a really important part of Unity, the Unity economy. So now let me switch gears a little bit, because I know a lot of people think, oh, the economy, I don't want to talk about the economy. What do I know about the economy? I don't know anything about the economy. I don't know anything about any money. I don't want to know anything about it. I just know that my life, the way I'm living it, I have to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, 4 jobs. I've got all these debts. I don't see any end in sight. My health insurance has lapsed. I don't have health coverage. I go and I can't even take care of myself or my wife. You know, you might have these feelings because that is the nature of the system that we're living in right now. So you might not be interested in the Unity economy, but you might be interested in something even bigger, which is what now this book has expanded into, which is called the Unity Project. Now, the Unity Project, of course, includes it's about unity, right? It's about how do we create a whole new way of living our lives. And so the Unity Project includes different components, and you can see this on unityproject.one, unityproject.one. That's the website. You can see the components. One of the components is an initiative called Stand for Freedom. This is one of our most important initiatives that has yet to be really fully activated, but it's all about freedom. We all want to be free. We all want to live joyous, happy lives. That's what we all want. Guess what? We all want the same thing. So let's focus on our common ground. Let's focus on what we want. So stand for freedom, not standing against anything, standing for freedom. And so we all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that's what this is really all about. So that's the Stand Up for Freedom initiative. Then we also have, as Joey, you mentioned in the beginning, the Veritas, Unitas, Caritas Initiative. This is an initiative, and by the way, those words are Latin words, and they were chosen very intentionally because Latin is a language that goes back a long, long time. And guess what? These principles, Veritas, Unitas, Caritas, which I'll explain in a minute, they also go back throughout history, throughout all the way back to the cave people days as well. So this, so what does it mean? Veritas means truth. It doesn't mean like my truth or your truth or that person's truth. As much as those things are valuable and true for each person, here we're talking about objective reality. We're talking about facts. We're talking about verifiable facts. We're talking about science. This is why science is important. This is why anyone that's trying to fight the scientists is on the wrong side of history, and why science is really important. So Veritas stands for truth. Truth is really important. If you don't have truth, that is one of the foundations of civilization itself. If you don't have truth, you don't have a civilization. And by the way, civil is part of the word civilization, obviously, right? So being civil with one another is really important. It's not weakness. It's actually strength. To be restrained, to be able to express your opinion, and to talk logically and calmly about issues that affect all of us. And so being civil and the whole act of civility in society, it's very important. So lack of civility is the sign of a society that is going in the wrong direction. So this is very important. Now, so that's Veritas, truth. Unitas is unity, right? It's about coming together amidst our differences and weaving together throughout our diversity what unites us, focusing on intentionally on what unites us. That's what Unitas is all about, unity. It doesn't mean we're all the same, everybody's the same, nobody's different. No, not at all. It just means that we are unified in the way we come together to create the world that we wish to inhabit, which is what we all want, a joyous, peaceful, abundant life. So that's Unitas. Caritas actually can be interpreted in a few different ways. Sometimes it's interpreted as charity, which I think is a narrow definition. Sometimes it's compassion, which is I like the definition the most. But also it's service and also compassionate service. So I like to use compassionate service. So that is another part of what defines a civilization, is caring for those who don't have or those who need, right? Caring, having compassion, being of service to our fellow brothers and sisters, and mothers and fathers and grandfathers and granddaughters and people of all kinds, right? That's what that's all about. So this trio, actually, the reason why I thought about this trio was because one of my graduate degrees was at Villanova University, and they had this motto, Veritas, Unitas, Caritas. And, I get emotional even thinking about like how amazing that is. And so that motto has been a source of inspiration for me for many, many years. And as I think about the big picture and I think about the arc of civilization, which is another book I'm writing, because we need to, it's important to not just look at our local lives, but to zoom out and think as global citizens, because we're all on this planet together. Global problems require global solutions. It's very important to view ourselves as global citizens, as world citizens. And also, what's really important is to zoom out in the sense of time itself, recognizing that we're in this very narrow window of time. And so this is why going back to the cave people days is actually really important, because we can see these patterns that I referred to before. And if you see the patterns, you see the history, you can say, look, we don't need to, we can break the chain. We don't need to continue this madness. We know enough. We have enough. And we are enough to be able to make these changes. So the Veritas, Unitas, Caritas Initiative is an initiative that focuses on, of course, these three principles. And I have started an outreach to, I started actually with all of the schools that I either took classes at or collaborated with, which includes all of the Ivy League schools, plus Stanford and Berkeley and Oxford and Cambridge and others. And I sent them letters telling them about this initiative, inviting them to consider being a part of this conversation, and reminding them that universities have been lighthouses during times when darkness has fallen, like these times that we're in right now. Let us not kid ourselves. Darkness has fallen. Does that mean that all hell's breaking loose? No. It just means that now is the time to really put our heads together and our hearts together to come together and to decide, do we want to live like this? Do we accept for example, do we accept what's going on here in this country of ours, in the US? Do we accept what's going on around the world with similar dynamics everywhere else in the world? Or do we wish to be being able to use our sacred creativity to imagine a different solution? So that's what the Unity Project is all about. So it's got the Unity economy as one of its pillars. It's got the Stand for Freedom as one of its pillars. It's got the Veritas, Unitas, Caritas Initiative as one of its pillars. UnityCoin is one of its pillars. The World Community Network is very important, enabling technology for all of this, as well as the Council of AIs. So that's what the Unity Project is all about. We have this massive opportunity to come together. And some of us are going to be really interested in the economic parts. Other of us, like I've never been interested in the economy, frankly, and finances, not at all. But again, through sitting and meditating and praying, and through dreams that came to me, all of this was just downloaded into me. And I'm like, wow, I've got to share this. So I'm really, really excited about these times that we're living in right now. We are in very perilous waters, make no doubt about it. But we're also in very exciting times because we have the opportunity of waking, of coming together and really, truly waking up to the recognition that we live in an infinite universe. And actually, in the primer of the Unity economy, and I'm probably going to modify the book to also include this, because I added I started working on the primer after I created the first book, the full book. But I say in there that we need to use this almost like a mantra. Like, we live in an infinite universe. We live in an infinite universe. We live in an infinite universe. To really let that sink in and to recognize the profound implications of that. And by the way, I also want to talk about Abundance, because that's another really important aspect here, right? The Unity economy is subtitled Unlocking the Future of Work, Abundance, and Purpose in an Infinite Universe. And so the infinite universe part's really important, but abundance is also really important. Now, in the past, people would talk about, oh, we want to have peace and prosperity. I don't use those words, peace and prosperity, because they're just overused. And I want to reflect that we're doing something different. So the words I use are unity, harmony, and abundance. Because abundance, when you think about prosperity, you think about money, typically, right? Abundance, what is abundance? Abundance means we have what we need. We have a roof over our heads. Forget about the fact whether we own it or not. Let's just forget about that for a second. What do we really want? We want a roof over our heads, right? We don't want to be rained on. We want to be able to sleep at night and be warm, right? Or, cool in the summer. That's what we want. We want to have enough food, right? And we think, oh, I need to have more money so I can get nice food, organic food, or, go to nice restaurants or whatever. But the abundance mindset is all about having enough of what we need. So abundance, this is so important. If we look at some of the work that's being done today, and Peter Diamandis is a really good example, probably the best example. There are other people, but Peter Diamandis is a very important inspiration for me because he writes about and he documents in a research-based way abundance and how it's already here. So what does that mean? It's already here. Well, think about the advent of 3D printers. Now, many people don't know this, but 3D printers are not just used to print some little plastic toy. That's how people knew about them several years ago, and not very long ago, actually. But now 3D printers are actually creating houses, entire houses, and they can create a whole house in I forget what it is now, 2 days, a whole house. Now, is it a fancy house? No, but so maybe in 4 days, it's a fancier house. 5 days, now you have a sort of a mansion. It's incredible. And I actually have this vision that I keep seeing is actually swarm-based AI-enabled 3D printing technology, which will build skyscrapers in the near future at very, very low cost. So we're talking about the ability, what do people need? Abundance. People need food, water, and shelter at an absolute minimum, right? So shelter. We now have the ability of printing out of almost nothing houses. It's just amazing. It's incredible when you think about the abilities that we have. But there's also now capability of creating water out of thin air. Maybe not quite out of thin air because you need to have a solar panel, but literally now there are machines that will take, and you put a solar panel and it takes water out of the air. So this is very, very profoundly important because more than a quarter of the people in the world right now, as we speak, don't even have clean water to drink or bathe in. More than a quarter of the people in the world. So this technology that exists today, It's mind-blowing. It already exists. There's also technology that creates food almost out of thin air. There's, you need to have this thing that looks like a microwave box, and you have to put some materials in there, but it creates food. It's incredible. It's like out of Star Trek. We're going to see more and more of this. Why? Because we live in an infinite universe. And living in an infinite universe means anything and everything is possible. Anything and everything is possible, including having abundance of everything. So this is what the Unity economy, the promise that it holds, is to actually create a world where everyone can thrive. A unified world a harmonious world and an abundant world where everyone can thrive. So I think we're just living in an incredibly important time. So I know I've been kind of just, doing a stream of consciousness here on the topics. Do I need to cover anything else here, Joey?
I'm looking at your notes, and it looks like it was a wonderful summation. Okay, I think the most important part, and we should leave time for this, is how can people get involved? So how to step in, not just tune in. A reflection back to, Timothy Leary, another fulcrum time in U.S. history, right? The 1960s. And I feel like in many ways through the events of 5 years ago and in through all of this, it feels like we have taken a step back in some ways, which is okay. So how do people step in, not just tune in?
Great question. So I'm working as fast as I possibly can to get this book, The Unity Economy, out there into the world. And it's basically, it's written, it's been edited, it's pretty polished already, but we're seeking endorsements, and that's really important for people, because people want to know, well, why should I read this book? And it makes a difference if somebody comes along that and you respect, comes along and says, hey, you should read this book. So that's what we're doing right now. But also, it's much more than a book, as I said earlier. So there needs to be multiple ways for people to have access and to be able to consume and ingest and understand this massive paradigm shift, because it starts in our minds, and it's really important. The whole educational part of this cannot be overstated. And so I've got the primer almost done, and so you can read about 100-page book, and then you'll have a pretty good idea of what the Unity economy is. And then if you want to dive into more details, then you can read the full book, which is more than 300 pages. But we're also creating a workbook, a companion workbook, so that people can come together and say, well, how can we take these principles and actually do something with it? And so there's concrete, specific examples in the book, but also that will be in the workbook that will help people actually take this knowledge and make it something real in their lives, in their local lives. Like, we don't have to wait for governments to come along and to do this for us. They're not going to come along and do this for us. We have to do it ourselves. It's not because they don't want to, they just don't know how. So it's really important to recognize the power that we have actually in our hands, every single one of us. We have usually have no clue about actually how much power we have. So coming together is really, really important. So these books that I just mentioned, and there's also a facilitator's guide, because if you have workbooks and you have people coming together, we need to support the people that say, hey, I love this. I want to teach this to others, right? So we have this facilitator's guide that's being developed. And also a children's book, like our children are going to say, hey, what's all this about? I want to, so they need to understand in language that they can understand, like, what is all this about? Like, why is this so cool and exciting and amazing? So all of that's under development. Now, what can people do once the books are out? Of course you can read them, but the World Community Network, I would say, is the most important thing that anybody can do, is actually join the World Community Network, because there's power in numbers. When I have meetings with investors and people say, oh, well, that sounds like a great idea, but who's really interested in it? I can't just point back to when I started the very first social network years before Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, and say, well, 700,000 people came together at that point in time. I have to say, look, how many people are at the World Community Network who are all wanting to live in a better world? So if any of this resonates with you, the simple act of just registering on the site will be enormously helpful. And by the way, we have a really cool, so let me just say, what is the World Community Network? So as I said earlier, a lot of people are going to look at it and go, oh, cool, it's another social network, but a better social network than, the others that are out there. And the reason why they may think that is because it does have private messaging. It has the ability of posting status updates and videos and sharing your life with the people and connecting with other people and having friendships and being able to send goodwill to other people, which is a feature that doesn't exist in any of the other platforms. And there's a lot of really cool things, but what's really, really super cool is everything you do on the site, tying this back to UnityCoin and the Unity economy, everything you do on the site earns you points. Now, this is not just any points, because these points are going to be convertible into UnityCoin in the future once we roll out UnityCoin. So the act of registering gets you points. The act of, there it is. Thanks, Joey. The act of sharing it with other people, telling other people about it, you get points. And you can actually see this in a really cool dashboard. We call it the ripple effect, like what your ripple effect is. If you share it with other people, you can see how many people you shared it with and how many of those people shared it with other people and how many points you're getting, right? And so, people that are joining now are joining not because, hey, great, we can earn these points and become millionaires, although I think a lot of people will, but they're coming together because this is a desire to create a new world, literally to create a new world. So if you register at the World Community Network, and thank you, it's worldcommunitynetwork.org. It takes just a few minutes to register. We do ask the typical amount of information from people at a regular social media site, so that we understand who you are, where you're located in the world, because we want to serve you. The more we know about you, the more we can actually serve you. And it also allows our AI systems, which are in development right now, to better figure out, again, how to serve you. And I will say also something just very briefly about our AI systems. They're in development, but the thing that makes our AI systems different than any other platform is that, number one, we will tell you what the algorithms are, right? When people have heard about it so many times. Oh yeah, it's the algorithms. We see things because of the algorithm. Well, what is an algorithm? What is the algorithm? What is the algorithm? Like, what on earth are people talking about? I want to see it. You can't see it. Well, we're going to make it transparent. We're going to tell you. We're going to say, look, here is how we curate content for you and display it for you. Here are all the ways that we do that. And if you don't like those ways that we do that, and you want to change it, you want to customize it, you don't need to customize it. But if you want to, we're going to give you the ability to change it and customize it based on what you want to see on the site, not what we want you to see, or, how, these algorithms are designed to maximize clicks and money for the companies. That's not what we're doing here with World Community Network. It's a completely different model. So three things about the AI systems that we're deploying. One is they're transparent. Number two, they're customizable. And number three, they're going to be resettable, which means if at any point in time you decide, I just want to start over. I've used the site for a while. I want to reset the algorithm. I just want to start fresh. Sometimes people change their name, for example, right? Because they have awakening experiences or whatever. Their lives change. This is all part of why it's important to think about like the caterpillar to butterfly dynamic that occurs in nature. This happens to us. It's not just something fancy and amazing we can look at in nature and go, oh, isn't that really cool? Although it is, it's clearly a miracle what's happening. But this happens to ourselves as well. So we can transform ourselves. So if anybody feels like their life they want to have a fresh start, they're a new person, they had an awakening experience, they see the light of day, they recognize we're living in an infinite universe, and oh my God, like, whoa, this changes my entire life and how I live my life. You want to change your algorithm, reset it. We allow people to do that. So there's a lot of really unique creative things. But again, everything you do on the site actually earns you points. And again, the points will be convertible into UnityCoin once we deploy it. So that's a little bit about the World Community Network. Yeah, and maybe I'll just say a little bit more about it and say we have the ability of sharing videos as well, similar to YouTube. And that whole area will be expanded greatly in the future. We're focusing on, of course, uplifting, inspiring content. That's what we're trying to do, is to help inspire and uplift people. Education, we will have lots and lots of videos about the infinite universe. What does that even mean, right? So people need to see it. And so not just books, a lot of people, they don't even want to read anymore. I don't read very much myself anymore. I want to watch videos. A lot of other people want to watch videos. So we're going to be creating a lot of video content about lots of different subjects to help people literally transition into this new world that we're co-creating together. So super exciting time. So I guess that's the World Community Network. There's a lot of other features that you can check out. There's like an online calendar, events calendar, and other things as well. But I think that those are the main things. So what can you do if you want to join the movement? Register. It's a very simple act, but very powerful act of registering at the World Community Network. And then, of course, once the book, The Unity Economy, comes out, if you're interested in the economy, tell people about it, read it yourself, share it. And by the way, I also want to say there's quite a bit in the Unity economy that has nothing to do with the economy. And it has a lot to do with talking about our infinite nature, that each one of us is an infinite being, and of infinite value and infinite potential and infinite capabilities. And it will awaken you. If you read the whole book, it is much more than information about an economy or about economics. There's a lot of information in there deliberately and intentionally to help awaken you to the true nature of our being as individuals and as a collective society of people living on the planet. So, did I miss anything else, Joey? The World Community Network?
I think that let me just go through here what you sent me and make sure, but I believe
yeah, and I'll do the same.
Yeah. We have some time. Why not for those who it's been a while since you've been on the show, so they may have forgotten, or people, we're always obtaining new audience growth. So what has been your journey? You talked about having the first social network ever that had 700,000 people on it. We talked about the Rainbow Bridge. I mentioned the initiative you were taking to address some fundamental problems with the United Nations. Give us an idea of how this all started for you and the progression that's gotten you to World Community Network and the Unity economy.
Well, that is such a brilliant question, Joey. Thank you. And I do think it will be helpful for anyone listening or watching to understand a little bit more about me, just so that you can understand what my journey has been, like why I say the things that I say, right? I actually came from a pretty dysfunctional family, like many of us. And I don't even remember large parts of my childhood. It was that dysfunctional. But the good news is that when I was, let me say that the good news is that I didn't necessarily see it as good news until later. But when I was growing up, my mother was born and raised in Turkey, so she was 100% Muslim. My father was Jewish, was very interested in Christianity and in Zen Buddhism and in transcendental meditation. And they raised me and my two sisters as Christians. So at the time, it was very confusing. It was like, what does all this mean? Like what? And again, it almost felt like a curse at the time, but I have since come to recognize it as absolutely the greatest gift one of the greatest gifts I ever could have received, is to have that experience of coming from a multi-religious and multicultural family. My dad was so interested in transcendental meditation and in Zen Buddhism. Like I said, I was always hearing about these koans, these Japanese koans. What is the sound of one hand clapping? And I'd be always, I'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, that's such a stupid idea. Like, he's like, no, what's your answer? And so now, it's something that I understand completely. Back then, it was like, it was just something that bent my mind. But he was so interested in that, and he was also so interested in transcendental meditation that he took me and my two sisters to learn how to do TM, transcendental meditation, when I was 12. And I have been meditating ever since. And I really took it to it like a fish in water, and have been meditating, as TM as a base, but then over time, as I started to study the world's major wisdom traditions, I started to adapt and experiment with other kinds of meditations as well. There are many, many different forms of meditation. And so that's kind of how my childhood started, looking for like a way of having a peaceful life amidst all the chaos that was going on. And meditation really was a very important part of that. So if you fast forward, I definitely had an entrepreneurial spirit. I started my first business when I was 12, selling mung bean sprouts. First attempted to sell them to restaurants, and they just looked at me sideways, thinking, what is a mung bean sprout, first of all? And then when I showed them, they're like, you want to have those on our salad bar? Like, it was way ahead of my time. They didn't, And then I thought, well, there's got to be, like, I saw my dad growing them and he was eating them. And I thought, well, I'll go to the health food store. So I went to the health food stores, and they were like, oh, it'd be great if you could grow those for us. Then, our customers, they wouldn't have to grow it themselves. They could just buy them. And so that was pretty cool. And I remember thinking like a business person at the time, like how many boxes do I need to have? How many plastic bags? How many ties do I need to have? How much do they cost? How much do they cost if I buy one at a time versus 100 at a time? And oh, wow, that's really cool. I buy 1,000 at a time. They would cost almost nothing, like thinking like that. That's why I say that was the first business I had, because I was thinking like a business person. And I've had several other businesses, and I won't go into all of them now, but that's been a really important part of my journey, is opening businesses. And I run several businesses today as well. And so I started The Park, the first intentionally global online community, back in 1994. And it was, again, years ahead of its time. The tagline, my vision was, let's create a unified world in cyberspace. And people would just look at me like, what do you, and so I didn't have the language, for talking about it like I can talk about it today, or like people can talk about social networks today. But I ran it from 94 until about 2001. We had to shut down during the dot-com craze. But by the time we shut down, we had about 700,000 people, like I mentioned before, all who resonated with this idea. And so we had to shut it down. And then I started working mostly in project and program management, in increasing levels of responsibility in different companies, bringing that skill set and bringing knowledge management into the workplace. And so when I was running The Park, it was incredibly challenging. Lots of sleepless nights, years of sleepless nights, just incredible stress and strain. And I drew upon all of the the lessons that I had learned, all of the major wisdom traditions. I was reading the Bible, I was reading the Torah, I was reading the Bhagavad Gita, I was reading all these different religious texts and taking notes on them all. And one day, towards the end of the park, I was sitting there meditating, and I was like, I had this epiphany. I'm like, oh my God, these notes, this is drawn from all the world's major wisdom traditions. This is the common ground in all the world's major wisdom traditions. And so I received guidance in meditation. I say my guides, they're just sort of thoughts in my own head, not like voices that I actually hear, but, guidance that I needed to write the smallest possible book in the fewest number of words. So that was the first version of the Rainbow Bridge. It was published in 2001, and it was like a little 3 by 5 inch book. And it was universal principles that are found in all the world's religions. It doesn't matter what religion you believe in, what religion you don't believe in, what race, religion, age, culture, doesn't matter. Even if you're not religious at all. I have several friends who are actually atheists who say the Rainbow Bridge is one of their favorite books, which was really shocking to me. And so I couldn't have written that book if it weren't because of the extremely rough time I had surviving the time of running the park. So that was really important. The park was important for a number of reasons, but it gave rise to the Rainbow Bridge. And so then that was the Rainbow Bridge. And then as I said, I worked through various different companies in project and program management, thinking all along, well, I want to restart this social network idea. The world needs this. The world is not getting closer. This vision that I had way back then is more needed now than ever before. And then when I started to see Twitter, or now called X, just falling apart and all this incredible misinformation being allowed to propagate, and the way they ran their algorithms, and the same thing with Facebook, and now especially with Facebook, without having any content moderation, so people have no idea what they're reading is true or not. I was like, now I know how I'm going to create this, because now I have something very clear I can point to that's very different about what we're doing with the World Community Network. And then that gave rise to the Unity economy, because I realized that we need to change more than just this, we need to have more than just this World Community Network. We actually have to change the entire economic system. And then once that happened through meditations and dreams, I recognized that an even higher level construct was needed, which is what's called the Unity Project. So that is what I'm focused on now. It's the Unity Project. It's like the umbrella of over everything that I'm doing. It's like the guiding light, really, is Unity and everything that entails. So that brings us up to today.
There you go. So I learned some things. We've known each other probably about 5 years now, I think. Yeah. And I learned some things. That's I did not know about your childhood. I was raised Catholic and came to my New Mystics projects is this pulling from different world systems, looking at the overlaps. Joseph Campbell, comparative mythology, world religions, comparative religions, looking at those commonalities. If people invested in that, we wouldn't have a lot of the religious war that we have. And so many of our wars, as we know, especially going on right now, are religious, on two levels. So I'm going to play, Brent, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little, and I'm going to speak from the point of view of probably the most cynical amongst us, which I am far from, but I'm playing devil's advocate.
Sure, yeah. And which I call angel's advocate.
Okay, good. So let's do that. So I'm gonna play angel's advocate. I absolutely love that. That feels closer to home. And as Bernie Sanders reminded us recently, there's State Street, there's Vanguard, there's BlackRock, Larry Fink's organization, who like are majority holders of like 80% of something of all like the corporations out there. During the inauguration, rightfully so, people noticed that the three people sitting behind the rising president were three tech giants, right? Zuckerberg, Bezos and Musk, right? And so there's Peter Thiel, right, who's very powerful up amongst those tech billionaires, who says, competition is for losers and these kinds of things. These guys control so much of the resources, make so many of the decisions, are, I think, very palpably the power behind the throne. So what you're talking about, is this a matter of critical mass, right? Is this an idea of like, if we light enough candles, we will eliminate the darkness? Is the idea here that we don't have to worry about what's going on there? If we unify, if we speak universal truth, if we serve with compassion, it will hit a critical mass where it will become the thing that will diminish the power of those gatekeepers. Am I conceptualizing this correctly?
Yes, 100%. I'm so glad that you brought it up, because a lot of people are thinking the same thing. Like, how are we going to, change things? And, it goes back to the quote that I mentioned from Buckminster Fuller.
Right.
To change something, don't fight the existing model. Create a new model that makes the old one obsolete. That's why it is so profound and so critical that we follow that wisdom in everything that we do. Because this is not about fighting all those people that you'd mentioned, right? We're not going to win if we fight them, but this is not a fight against them anyway. This is a fight for something, right? If we want to build a house, we're not going to spend our time building a house that we don't want. We're going to spend our time building a house that we do want. So it's all about consciously, intentionally focusing on what do we want to create. And people just need to have help. All of us need to have help with that. And so what I'm laying out in the Unity economy is exactly what I believe. And I haven't seen anything in the world that comes remotely close to this. And I'm not saying this, like in a bragging kind of way or anything. I'm just saying, like, I haven't seen anything. So it's empowering me to continue with great determination to continue to move forward with this vision, because money systems are based on trust. They're not based on natural resources. They're not based on some scarcity-based thinking. It's based on trust. So if you create an economic system that's based on trust, that is what will be successful, whatever the money system is. So if you create a money system that's based on concepts like truth, like unity and respect for diversity, and like service and compassion and love in action, if we focus on that, that is, of course, that's what we all want. Those are things that we all want, right? So that, of course, is going to engender trust. So this is not going to be something that just happens overnight. It is a massive shift. However, it happens one person at a time. And it is absolutely about a critical mass. And so we, when I'm doing everything I'm doing, yes, I read the headlines. Yes, I know how horrific things are. And I do not spend very much time on that. Why? Because I'm focused on what do we want to build. And that is what I think we all need to be doing. Again, I'm not saying that there isn't a place for peaceful resistance. There is absolutely a place for peaceful resistance to what's going on, with a focus on peaceful. That is so important, right? Anybody that wants to make a change in the world, do it peacefully. No matter what you're feeling, no matter how much anger you have, no matter how unfair things are, it will only make things worse if you're not peaceful. So if you can't be in public and be peaceful, then don't go. Go home and meditate. Go home and sit. And if you think you don't have enough time to just sit and meditate, then you need to make even more time for it. Right. So the tipping point is really important, and it's about recognizing that there's a better way. Also, another important quote. I love quotes. Well, I should say it's not that I love quotes, but I love the messages that certain quotes bring. And one of them is by Dr. Martin Luther King. So powerful and so profound. He said, "You do not need to see the whole staircase to take the first step." And that is also really profound. So if we're talking about a massive shift in the way we perceive the world and the way we create a new world, let's not get hung up on the fact that we don't have all the answers or we don't understand everything. Don't let that get in the way of just taking the first step. So the first step, those first steps can be talking to your loved ones, to your friends, to your colleagues, starting with the people that are closest to you, because it's easier, right, to have conversations, right, and then slowly expanding to other people, to other perspectives that you may not agree with. But yes, it's work, and with a capital W, it's work to be living on the planet right now. But it's also a tremendous opportunity. I think that every one of us that has incarnated on this planet right now, without getting into all the metaphysics of whether we chose to be here or not, we have an opportunity. We have a tremendous opportunity. We have an opportunity to live in the old world, the old paradigm, or to recognize that there's a completely new paradigm and that we can actually live in this new paradigm. So I encourage everyone to do that.
There you go. So we have reached our time. Folks, the websites are up there. Brent was talking about meditate. If you can't go and be peaceful, if the news is driving you crazy, another thing you could do, go to worldcommunitynetwork.org. You're going to see that there are members from literally all over the country. I am there, and I have a profile.
And all over the world, actually.
Yeah. And to interact with people. So please do that. Brent, please let me know when the book is available so I can share with our audience, to do social media and all of that kind of stuff. Otherwise, folks, we're going to say good night. Tomorrow or next week, I have another one of the students that I've mentored since, another person who, since they were a teenager and now is a mother, soon to be a wife, is a filmmaker, is a writer, writes from her trauma, and things like that. So join me next week when I talk to Crystal. So thank you all for your time. I'm going to go out with the bumper, as I always do. And I will see you soon. So thank you for making this project possible. Brent, thank you for coming 3 times. I'm sure it'll be 4.
Thank you,
at
Joey.
the appropriate time.